Hi, my name's Robert, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about eating disorders. So this time I wanted to talk about how you can get help. I know last time I talked a little bit about how it's important to get help, and I think that's something that a lot of people mention, but you don't always find that they go into it very much. And I think it's a really important thing, so I wanted to talk about it today. So, before I get into it, I wanted to give a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a medical professional, not a mental health expert, just a guy who has an eating disorder, and just going to talk a little bit about what I know, and hopefully maybe give you some things to think about, maybe some possible things to look into that might help you out. So, maybe take everything I say with a grain of salt. Yeah, so probably the most important thing to consider is what level of treatment you need. That's going to vary between every person. Everyone's going to have kind of different needs, and probably the most important thing for you is to figure that out. That doesn't doesn't depend on your gender or anything else. If you have an eating disorder, or you think you might, then you definitely need to figure out what kind of treatment you're going to need. And the only way to really do that is to go see a medical professional. I know that can be pretty complicated. Here in the United States, we have like the insurance stuff you've got to deal with. You might have to get referrals to see the right doctor, and then you've got like the United Kingdom, and you've got Australia, other Commonwealth countries. I think they have different systems of medicine, and I'm not really sure how those work. So I'm sure there's a lot of different things for different people to navigate. From my own experience, like the thing that I needed to do first was actually get somebody who was kind of in my court, because I had to get help convincing myself that I needed to get help, right? So I had to go ahead and talk to a good friend of mine and ask him to kind of help, encourage me to go and actually see a mental health, professional. So. If you're if you're at university, if you're on a college campus, many of those will have like their own kind of mental health kind of group or whatever within the university. Ours was called what was it called? So it was just student health. It was part of the student health group at my school, and so I was still in school when I started having a real problem. So I was actually able to go to the mental health part of our student health group, and I talked to them first, and I was able to talk to a counselor for several months while I was on a waiting list to go ahead and talk to the doctor that I'm currently seeing and working with, to work on my eating disorder. So that might be kind of what you have to do. You kind of have to kind of jump from lily pad to lily pad to kind of get where you're going. It doesn't make things easier. And speaking from experience here in the U.S., the insurance thing often doesn't make things easier. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's just what you have to do to work through it, I guess. So to me, there are kind of, I like to think of doctors in two different kind of groups. So you've got kind of the physical doctors, and you've got like the mental health folks. Right, and so the physical doctors often, there might be a medical doctor, an MD. I guess in the UK, they often call them like GP, general practitioner. Here we call it like maybe a family doctor here in the US. So it's often a good idea maybe to go see just kind of a general practitioner like that to make sure that your health is doing okay. But a counselor will probably tell you to go do that if you go in to see a counselor, or a psychiatrist similarly will tell you to go do that just to make sure that everything is physically okay, because you're doing your body harm by not feeding yourself, right? So I guess for me, like, I found the whole process to be really awkward, because you've got to deal with the kind of medical doctors, and I don't want to say that like medical doctors don't care. They're really often, passionate, compassionate, kind people who really want to help others. But many of them, they don't have a lot of experience with people who have eating disorders. And so, like at the very best, they're probably just a little confused. Like if you're not someone who's clearly anorexic, they're going to look at you and go like, well, you look okay, like what's wrong? So you kind of have to give some grace, some patience. And yeah, I didn't find that to be maybe the best experience myself, kind of checking in with medical doctors on things. But it's still important to do, because you want to make sure that, that everything is physically okay. Because if there are physical problems, then you might have to take the level of care to a higher level of care, right? And that's, again, something to talk to your medical professional about. Honestly, even just talking to the mental health professionals, for me at least, was really awkward at first. Probably for many people this stuff is really personal. Many people, probably for everybody, this is really personal. So it's hard to open up. It takes some time to really kind of build a bond with the person that you're working with. And so it's good to give it that time. For many people, it'll take a couple sessions, maybe several months, to start building that rapport until you feel comfortable and you feel like you can, really share things with this person and be more honest and open. So please give it the time. Give it time, because it takes time. I've been seeing somebody now for like 2 years, and we're getting there. Really physically doing well, and I'm finally getting through some of the emotional baggage and all that stuff, and just working on better ways of dealing with stress. For me, that's where things come from. And everyone's different, so just please make sure you give it that time so that you can really get through things. So the other thing that I really did want to mention, probably one of the most important things that I think I have to share with anybody out there, is that they're not going to commit you. I won't fully promise that, so I did talk to my counselor, and there are certain situations that a medical professional, whether they're an MD, a doctor, or a counselor, psychiatrist, whatever, that they will have to commit a person. And so, it's not a secret, right? If you pose an immediate threat to yourself or to others, right, to the life, the well-being of yourself or others, then that's the only time that they'll even think of committing you, right? And from talking to my doctor, she takes it very seriously. She never just goes, oh well, you seem like you're having a bad day. Let's just go ahead and put you in the hospital for the 72-hour hold, because that would be fun. Doctors don't do that. It's a thing they take very seriously, and they're only going to do it if they feel that it's absolutely necessary. They're not going to just stick you in a straitjacket, right, and put you in a padded room. I promise. That's not how this works. So, I was really afraid of that for a long time, as I went in to see different medical professionals about this, and it's just not a worry. They're really not going to just toss you in the hospital, right? There's a lot of talking, there's a lot of going back and forth. They are going to try to figure out what they need to do for you, what they can do to help you, and they're not going to just toss you in the hospital, all right? That's not how this works. That's, please put your mind at ease on that. They're not going to just, wow, I said that 7 times now. Anyway, don't worry about that. So it's really important to get help, and it's much better if you get help sooner rather than later. If you think about like an engine, like a car engine, I feel like as an American anyway, that's something a lot of people have experience with here in the U.S., right? Is like maybe driving a car, and if you've driven a car, then you probably are friends with the person that owns it, or your parents own it, or you own it, and so you understand that you have to maintain it. And so if your car gets too low on oil, right, then the engine is going to burn itself up. And so it's always best, right? We do this preventative maintenance thing. You change the oil every so many miles or kilometers or months or whatever. It's really important to do that, to take care of things. I mean, our bodies are the same way. So it's very important that we try to fix things, mental health-wise, sooner rather than later. Big mistake I made was to, I went in and I saw a counselor like 10 years ago, a long time ago. And when I saw them, I went in, we talked, we did some kind of assessment or whatever, and they said, okay, so I have good news, you don't have an eating disorder. And I was like, yeah, I don't have an eating disorder, this is great. And we're like, you have disordered eating. And I walked out of that, I never looked back. Like for a number of years, I didn't, I was just like, it's fine, no problems. And that was a really big mistake. Disordered eating can be the path to the dark side. Anyway, I mean, it can be the path into an eating disorder, right? It really can. It's just preventative maintenance, If you don't have to replace most of the major components on your car's engine, you're going to be a much happier person. Same way. If you're not, say, inpatient anorexic, you're going to be a much happier person if you fix that 5-10 years before you have a real problem. That's just how it is. They say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I've been a very fortunate person and not apparently having done any major damage to my body yet. I'm really working to not have that be a thing in my life, in my experience. But I know a lot of other folks haven't been that lucky. And so it's really important to take care of yourself and fix things earlier rather than later. So please do that for you.